Welcome back to College Football Addiction. Drake C. Toll locked on Big 12 with us. And Drake, we've got some realignment movement. Are we about to have a Power 5 again? Probably not, but let's jump into Texas State and the Pac-12.
Realignment is back, TJ. The one thing that no one could get enough of last offseason is here once again, and in the form of something that actually affects the Big 12 mightily and the ACC as well. If you're an SEC fan or a Big 10 fan, I think you can already deduce that because of the area the ACC is going into in college football and college athletics, you're likely to have a Clemson or Florida State in your hands pretty soon, possibly a Virginia or a North Carolina. We've all kind of come to the conclusion the ACC is going to lose a couple of schools by 2030. But now with this, not only are we inching toward a Power 5 being restored, Texas State going to the Pac-12, and Pete Thamel is the one saying that Texas State officials have informed the Sun Belts there's no collusion or tampering, that they have been expecting an offer from the Pac-12 and that those conversations will intensify. And from there, as a Power 5 is restored, and you're right, it's not exactly a Power 5 yet, but with that inkling of a restoration, it sends shockwaves through the Big 12. It sends shockwaves through the ACC. It sends shockwaves through all of college athletics. The reason being is now, when the ACC inevitably loses two of its top schools in the next 4 years, where they will look will be the next best conference. Is that the AAC? Is that UAB or Memphis? Is it Temple? Is it somebody in the Sun Belt? Or is it now the Pac-12 being rebuilt with a UNLV, with a Boise State, with a Texas State that all look very viable, and even a Sacramento State that I think a lot of people are overlooking? And if you're the Big 12 and you say, whoa, wait a second, that's our territory. We didn't want North Texas. We didn't even want SMU. But if Texas State is viable enough, if we can make a university in San Marcos make sense financially for us, we will pull the trigger. What Washington State and Oregon State are doing, and really this is what it boils down to, what those two schools are doing is not rebuilding the Pac-12. They're rebuilding a launching pad, a launching board for those universities to find their way into the ACC or the Big 12 when the next wave of realignment comes. They want to put themselves in such a position that they can maneuver their way back into Power 5 revenue, back into $30+ million a year in TV contract money. That's what this is. The addition of Texas State bolsters the Pac-12, and from there, the two biggest schools in that rejuvenated conference can make themselves viable to the ACC or the Big 12. Do I think Texas State's a Big 12 school? No. Is it possible? Sure, anything is. Do I think that UNLV is an ACC school? No. Is it possible? Again, sure. But I do believe that Oregon State, Washington State, the resume they come into this entire thing with will only be helped by the addition of Texas State and the fact that the Pac-12 now lives. They needed another football member. They've got another football member. What you're seeing is another massive domino falling that will affect the ACC and the Big 12. We're going to overlook this and say, oh, great, Texas State to the Pac-12, fun for them, that's awesome. But what this is actually doing is rebuilding a structure in that conference that will allow its top members to have leeway or leverage to get into the Big 12 or the ACC, which I think is the goal, the ultimate goal of Washington State and Oregon State.
So on Texas State for just a moment, going to the Pac-12, as somebody who's there and very familiar with or not there, but like covering the Big 12, somebody who has a lot of teams there in Texas and understands that, does Texas, where do they fall in this pecking order of new teams to this new look Pac-12? I'll ask it. Is there anything close to Texas money there with Texas State?
There's something, and it's the recruiting hotbed is where you have to start. San Marcos is a great place to go to college. I mean, look, we not saying Waco is anything special, but when I was at Baylor, we would leave Waco on the weekends, go to San Marcos, and float the river. It's a really easy sell for recruits. And G.J. Kinney is doing something there that is phenomenal. You know, T.J. Finley was their quarterback at Texas State for a couple of years, or for a year, I should say, and was a star. They actually beat Baylor in a massive upset in Waco when Kenny first got there because they took 50 transfers. They did the Colorado method, and it worked immediately. It was their first year to ever go to a bowl game. So under the leadership of Kinney, and with further investment in college athletics at Texas State specifically, they look sexy for a conference. They've got the location. They have the state of Texas. They have the recruiting right now. They have the transfer portal savvy. And when they get TV money, you can see them start to unlock new things. This reminds me of what BYU did when they came to the Big 12. They were just waiting on $30 million a year in revenue. And by the way, they haven't even gotten that yet. They're still $12 million short until this year because of their first couple of seasons being a lesser revenue share to get them in the door. For Texas State, once they've got more formidable money, once they've got CW money even, and then you're like, oh, CW money. But yeah, it's more than what they had. Once those millions of dollars start to roll in from the TV contracts, they can invest more post-house settlement into their student athletes and revenue sharing. And as they become more serious about that, because they have the strong foundation of a great recruiting hotbed, the NIL game, the transfer portal game, Texas State is dangerous. And they remind me a lot of a UNLV or of a Sacramento State who might be overlooked right now, but in 10 years, we could look back and go, shoot, would they have been a better addition than Cincinnati? Would they have been a better addition than Cal? This is the kind of university that gives me that vibe.
Does this change or alter? I guess I'm asking you to put on your Nostradamus hat, right? So I don't know if you know this to any degree of certainty, but in your mind, does this start to expedite other changes, the big changes that we expect? Is this ripple that causes a crack that we see other effects in 5 years? Or do you think things maybe even get escalated more or expedited more than that 2030 deadline?
Yeah, let me pull the curtain back a bit for the fans at home. This is where TJ and I meet weekly and say, okay, what are the biggest things in college football? And this is one that takes some convincing. Like, TJ, but bear with me here for a second. I know it's weird that Texas State to the Pac-12. It's kind of funky. And is that a major news topic? Yes, because it is that domino, because it matters that much for where we are going in college football as something that expedites the process of even Clemson or Florida State leaving the ACC. What you all have to understand is that we just created a new conference. The Pac-12 didn't exist a week ago. The second that the Texas State actually joins that league, we have reinvented a conference and are a step closer to having another powerful league in college football. They have Boise State, Washington State, Oregon State, UNLV. They've got powerful football there. You've got to turn your eyes to that to understand where we are heading in the next couple of years and how that process certainly can be expedited by another very strong league that can, and we'll talk about this, that can compete with the ACC. That's another big piece of this year. The ACC is as weak as it's been in the last few decades, and because of that, the stronger the Pac-12 gets, the stronger the Big 12 gets, the worse off the ACC is, and that's a big piece of this.
Yeah, I wonder, whether it's 2 years or 5 years or 10 years, when the ACC's powers leave, right? And there's a best case, there's a middle of the road case, and there's a worst case for the ACC. Best case, maybe just 2 teams leave. I think that is probably outside the realm of possibilities, but we'll paint an absolute best case scenario and say that North Carolina and other teams stay. I think that's probably crazy to think. But there is a worst case scenario where Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina, Miami all leave. Yeah. Maybe Louisville, Virginia Tech get picked off. Maybe they go to the Big 12. Maybe Pitt goes to the Big 12. And you're left with the Wake Forests of the world. Georgia Tech goes somewhere, whether it's Power 2 or the Big 12, wherever. And you're left with the Syracuses and the Boston Colleges and the, Duke, if they don't go somewhere for hoops. You're left with non-football powers, and you are in Cal's and Stanford's if they don't get picked up. And then you're looking at the ACC and thinking, are they that much better than the Boise States and the Oregon States and the Washington States? And what does Texas State look like after 5-10 years of this? And so I do think it does create kind of a what ends up happening with the ACC. I mean, I don't think the Big 12 is, and I don't know if you have a take here, I don't know if the Big 12 is immune to teams leaving. I certainly think if Kansas got a call, which I'm not necessarily saying they will, I think they'd go. If Oklahoma State or Utah, I think if teams got a call, they would explore it and they would potentially go. But I do think that it the Big 12 doesn't have 2 anchors that are likely leaving, or maybe 3 or 4 anchors that are likely leaving. And so it does kind of create this weird dynamic where if this is a crack, it feels like another crack, and not if it is. It feels like another crack in what might be really bad news for the ACC.
I think so, and that is where I will continue to talk on my show is how poor the ACC feels right now, how poorly a spot they've been put in by their commissioner and by their leadership here recently, and that is it's weird to say that Texas State going to the Pac-12 is a massive issue for the ACC, but I think that's exactly what it is.